Words lingered so heavily you could hear someone's pen tumble from a desk. Do you truly fail to see the kind of person he is? My wife blinked rapidly. Pardon. The judge stared straight at her. Not furious, not even let down. Simply weary. The weariness that builds from witnessing the identical act repeated by too many individuals convinced of their own cleverness. I've encountered this pattern before. Someone takes a gentle, open, fragile individual and turns those very strengths into tools to attack them. Eventually, the narrative flips, and the compassionate one is labeled the unstable one. Her attorney attempted an interruption. Your Honor, we had no knowledge of any previous. The judge stopped him cold. You should have investigated more thoroughly. Then he turned toward me. Mr. Brenner, I recall the Prescott matter clearly. You were among the very few non-professionals who came forward to testify, despite the risks involved. I haven't forgotten you. My wife's composure fractured. Not completely broken, fractured. As though the facade she had maintained for years suddenly felt too tight. She shot a look at her lawyer. He bent close and muttered something. She gave a quick nod, then addressed the judge. That came out wrong. I was emotional. I continued to hold my silence. Because the reality was, I hadn't come here to prove my soundness to anyone. I had come to demonstrate that I refused to allow her to redefine who I was. Not through falsehoods, not through sympathy plays, not through staged weeping. And beyond these walls, I had been getting ready. I possessed references from past colleagues attesting to my character, health documents confirming my treatment and full recovery, proof of her manipulative patterns, and one piece of evidence her counsel had never anticipated, one capable of redirecting the entire case. Because if you attempt to rewrite another person's entire existence, you'd better pray they haven't saved the proof. The next morning, an email arrived from her legal team. Subject: Summary of requested exhibits for judicial examination. Kindly acknowledge receipt. I reviewed the attachment carefully, and buried inside, 2 pages down in a collection of scanned files, was something she never intended to submit. A PDF of a personal note, hand-scribbled, scanned and uploaded via her phone's memo application, labeled simply, Strategy, Separation Schedule, Mental Health Strategy. My pulse steadied as I absorbed it. In her handwriting, she outlined precisely how she planned to proceed. Cut me off by exploiting my counseling history. Highlight my sorrow over losing my brother to imply unreliability. Spread rumors among acquaintances about my supposed unpredictable actions. Insist she felt emotionally endangered. Then initiate proceedings discreetly, assuming I'd be caught off guard. She even noted, if I emphasize the psychological issues strongly enough, the court will lose interest. He'll give in. He always gives in. The document carried a date 3 weeks prior to when the papers were delivered to me. I sent it straight to my attorney with no message. Then I printed it, placed it in an envelope, and hand-delivered it to the judge's chamber's clerk along with a brief cover note. Offered for review of ethical considerations, in response to your Honor's expressed interest in matters of credibility. That same night, a shared acquaintance phoned me. She's falling apart, they reported. Claims you tricked her. I hadn't tricked anyone. She had trapped herself. I had simply been patient. And now the very tactic she believed would destroy me had turned into the irrefutable proof that revealed her true intentions. When we reconvened in court, the energy in the room had transformed. Her counsel appeared deflated. Mine was steady. The judge remained impassive, though his voice carried a new edge. This court has examined the additional documents provided after the last session. Prior to moving forward, I wish to summon a character reference, he announced. Her lawyer looked startled. Your Honor, may we inquire as to the source? The side door swung open. Rachel Prescott entered. The same Rachel whose domestic violence proceedings I had supported years earlier. At that time, she had been fighting simply to endure an abusive spouse. Today, she worked as an advocate for domestic violence shelters and a public educator. She met my eyes as she walked to the witness stand, then glanced at my wife, and the look she gave conveyed she understood the full picture already. Rachel, the judge began, could you address Mr. Brenner's reliability and moral character when facing pressure? She inclined her head. During my own ordeal, I was petrified to speak out. Noah was the sole ordinary citizen who appeared consistently, day after day. He traveled 2 hours each way to stand by me and 3 other survivors in that courtroom. He sought no recognition, never centered himself in it. I barely knew him then, yet I felt safe with him present. And I have never witnessed him behave without complete honor. My wife's expression hardened into granite. Her attorney hissed urgently into her ear. Then the judge spoke again. Considering the newly submitted personal writings and this endorsement, the court will reevaluate its preliminary stance on the respondent's alleged instability. That instant marked her understanding that her entire plan had crumbled, not from any shouting on my part, but from my choice to remain steady long enough for reality to overtake her deception. And overtake it did. Following Rachel's account, an odd, delicate stillness settled over the room. The sort of quiet that arrives when all pretense fades and honesty finally draws breath. The judge addressed my wife. "Do you wish to offer any reply?" He extended one last opportunity. She stood gradually, straightening her jacket, adopting that deliberate poise she employed whenever preparing to win over an audience. Now it seemed forced. "Well," she swallowed, "I never intended to cause him pain. Our relationship had been deteriorating steadily. I worried that without steering the account myself, I would end up with absolutely nothing. I reacted out of fear." She attempted to summon emotion. A single tear traced down. I remained in my seat. Because I wasn't present for drama. I was present for the official record. The judge arched a brow. "You reacted out of fear, and therefore constructed a false narrative of psychological collapse to gain leverage in this family matter?" Her mouth opened, then shut. Her counsel placed a restraining hand on her wrist, a quiet appeal to cease speaking. But the moment had passed. I rose at last, not for revenge, only to introduce material. "Your Honor, I request to submit Exhibit 17, I stated. Correspondence via email between the petitioner and an acquaintance, outlining optimal language to employ in these proceedings to depict me as unreliable without triggering formal evaluation. Dated 2 months prior. I passed the packet to the bailiff. The judge examined it in silence for almost 60 seconds, then set it aside. "Thank you, Mr. Brenner." With that, he declared a recess until the final decision, scheduled for the week ahead. My wife exited without turning around. Her carefully crafted image had vanished. What remained was solely the harm she inflicted upon herself. The chamber was filled to capacity for the concluding session. Lawyers present on both sides. Transcribers. A handful of area reporters seated in the rear, probably alerted by someone from her camp, hoping for favorable press. She arrived dressed in white, the shade typically saved for ceremonies or contrition. I chose gray, unobtrusive, calm. The judge arrived expressionless, took his seat, scanned the records, regarded us both, and delivered his ruling with careful, intentional composure. This court has evaluated every piece of evidence presented, encompassing personal writings, supporting statements, electronic messages, and sworn acknowledgments given voluntarily. My wife moved uneasily. On this basis, the court determines there exists clear and convincing proof of deliberate distortion concerning the respondent's psychological condition, undertaken with the purpose of influencing judicial results and external opinion. She recoiled slightly. Consequently, every demand submitted by the petitioner, including claims for maintenance, division of marital assets, and compensation for alleged distress, is hereby rejected. Her attorney blinked rapidly. No protest, only quiet. Moreover, the judge went on. The court grants the respondent complete title to the family home, relief from joint liabilities, and return of individually held resources previously restricted based on unsubstantiated assertions. I remained motionless. I barely exhaled. He met her gaze once more. "Ms. Brenner, the judicial system serves not merely to shield those in need, but to safeguard honesty itself. Your conduct attempted to take advantage of both. This court urges you to reflect upon that." The gavel fell. It was finished. She passed me in the corridor without speaking. Her footsteps echoed too sharply against the hush she had created. That same evening, I reviewed the final paperwork from my counsel, titled, Concluding Order, Restoration of Reputation. It represented far more than legal finality. It served as a documented affirmation. She had attempted to entomb me beneath fabrications, and I permitted her to excavate her own downfall using her very own statements. Within the next week, her online presence altered dramatically. The holiday pictures vanished. The edited seaside images. The motivational sayings concerning recovery and independence. In their place, Nothing. An empty avatar. Account set to private. No fresh posts. Because her version of events no longer held sway. The friends we once had in common? The majority ceased contacting her. Several reached out. Reached out to me directly. We had absolutely no clue things reached that level. She convinced us you were unreliable. She deceived them all. I replied to very few. Not from arrogance, but because I no longer required outside approval. The finest quality of truth? It moves forward without needing amplification. And once established, it stands without defense. That week I received a message from Rachel Prescott, the earlier witness. She wrote, "I've encountered individuals like her in the past. They exploit discussions of mental wellness not for self-preservation, but to reshape facts. Your decision to remain composed, allowing reality to inflict the consequences, that requires a resilience few ever discover." She included an announcement for a modest organization. She was launching a new initiative, one I might consider supporting. That evening I moved through the rooms and sensed how tranquil the space had become. Not vacant, serene. In the nightstand drawer, I rediscovered an aged note from my brother, one I had preserved among pages for years. Never permit others to transform your suffering into their stage lighting. I smiled, refolded it gently, and returned it to its place. She had attempted to cast me as the antagonist, but I refused to counter with volume. I waited. I gathered evidence. I recorded everything. I allowed her statements to entomb her. And ultimately, that quiet proved more powerful than any outburst she delivered in that courtroom. 1 month following the final order, I received an invitation to address a community gathering for men healing from manipulative partnerships. I nearly declined. I'm no orator. I'm reserved by nature. I dislike recounting pain for entertainment. Yet the idea of facing others who had endured the same understated conflict felt important. I shared with them what I had withheld from the judge. How humiliation seeps in through the gaps others create in your identity. How simple it becomes to question your own worth. When a loved one begins altering your history lie by lie. How frightening it is to grasp that your restraint has turned into their instrument. Then I explained what experience had taught me. Restraint can be reclaimed. Composure can become power. When everyone expects your outcry, occasionally the most effective response is to speak softly, carrying the full force of honesty. When I finished, an older gentleman in his 60s came forward. His grip shook faintly as he clasped my hand. "You didn't merely protect yourself," he told me. "You showed us how to remain standing when someone attempts to knock you off balance." Back home, I entered the kitchen and discovered an envelope waiting. A note from the judge. Inside lay a formal document. Certificate of Judicial Appreciation for Pro Bono Advocacy. Signed. Official seal applied. Straightforward. He had recalled my efforts on Rachel's behalf long ago. You advocated for strangers when no one advocated for you. And when your moment arrived, you refused to flee. You stood taller. I hung the certificate beside my brother's vintage instrument. And for the first time since the ordeal started, I no longer felt merely that I had endured. I felt I had concluded it. Through honesty. Through calm. Without violence. Only falsehoods dismantled,